Today we're doing the top 10 cards from the Voice of Isengard and the Ringmaker cycle of the Lord of the Rings card game. Now this cycle isn't one of the repackaged ones, so some of these cards might be tough to get, but as a result I'm not going through all the cards, I'm just going through the top ones. Get back to the bread and butter for the channel here. Lord of the Rings content. I bet Sam's bread and butter would be pretty good.
What are you doing?
Tomatoes, sausages, nice crispy bacon.
First honorable mention. Saruman. Saruman is kind of like Gandalf. Saruman is an ally card where you put him into play and he sticks around for one round and then he leaves. Saruman is arguably stronger than Gandalf in terms of what he does. He's got 3 willpower, 5 attack, 4 defense, 4 health, and the ability to basically choose a card and keep it out of play for an entire round. Problem is he's also got Doomed 3. Saruman, actually, I use him a lot playing true solo, because when you have a true solo game, the Doomed keyword isn't as bad. So if you're not familiar with cards with the Doomed keyword, the way it works, card with Doomed 1, when you play it, everyone, not that you're playing with, not just you, but if you're playing 2-player, both players will increase their threat by 1. If you're playing 4-player, all 4 players increase their threat by 1. So any card with the Doomed keyword is going to be better in general for solo play, just because the cost doesn't amplify as much. Some of these cards will give an effect for every player, but not all of them. Saruman, as a result, is good for solo play, but not good enough for multiplayer to make the top 10. Second honorable mention, Gwaihir. Gwaihir is an eagle ally. At this point, he was one of the best eagle allies because the eagles deck archetype that was built out in the first cycle of the game, the Shadows of Mirkwood cycle, was kind of weak and took a lot of cards to get going. Gwaihir makes the deck archetype a lot more playable, because when Gwaihir goes into play, you get to take an eagle card from your discard pile, which, given that eagles get discarded a lot, there are probably going to be some choices there. Brings them back into the play, and then at the end of that round, that card will go back into your hand. This is especially good for cards like Descendant of Thorondor, which you might have already had if you're buying all the cards in order, where a Descendant of Thorondor does 2 damage to a card when he enters play, and then 2 damage to a card when he leaves play. So this is a good way to get another Descendant of Thorondor effect, and then if Descendant of Thorondor, you can play him again from your hand and do the same thing. Similar with Meneldor, who's a later card, but Meneldor would put 2 progress on a location when he came in and out of play. You can also use Gwaihir to retrieve the Eagles of the Misty Mountains from your discard pile if you let one of those go by, because that's really the core of Eagles decks. But the reason why Gwaihir isn't higher is because Eagles decks still weren't very good, and trying to get the Eagles decks to work at this point was kind of like trying to get a loon to take off from a puddle that has been shrinking. Fun fact, if a loon lands in a large puddle and the puddle doesn't have enough runway for the loon to take off, the loon will die, or it'll just sit there for a while until the puddle gets bigger, maybe, or it dies. Loons are also birds. And the third honorable mention, which is a group of honorable mentions, are the trait enhancement attachments. Heir of Mardil, Wingfoot, and Warden of Arnor. All these cards are good, but require a little bit too much help to make the top 10. Warden of Arnor, for 1 cost, you attach to a character who is then allowed to put 1 progress on a location as it gets revealed from the encounter deck. This is basically having 1 cost for +1 willpower. Sometimes it's better to get progress on a location than to add the willpower, and sometimes you would rather have the willpower because you need to not lose the questing round. You won't always draw locations, so it doesn't work as well, especially in solo. With Wingfoot, if you can name what's coming in the encounter deck, you get to ready the attached hero, so it's like an unexpected courage card for half the cost, but knowing what's coming is only guaranteed if you have Hennemarth Riversong, otherwise you're just guessing and you're not going to be right all the time. And then Heir of Mardil is probably the strongest of the 3, because Heir of Mardil allows you to ready a hero when he or she receives a resource, which there are a lot of cards that give resource bonuses, but you need one of them. Heir of Mardil works great with Steward of Gondor. If you wait during the round to use Steward of Gondor, say the combat phase, you can ready the hero when you get the resources, but you have to wait. You have to not use the resources earlier in the turn. So like Heir of Mardil was the closest to make the top 10, but it just missed. Now into the top 10. Number 10 is the Tree People.
Those freaking elves, man. They just came out of the trees, man. They just came out of the trees.
The Tree People is a Sylvan deck card. The way the Tree People works is you play the Tree People for cost 0. You return a Sylvan card to your hand, which is what Sylvan cards do, and then you look through the top 5 cards of your deck for another Sylvan ally to put into play. So you swap out 1 Sylvan for another, provided you have one in the top 5 cards of your deck. Sometimes you can swap out for a stronger Sylvan ally. Playing the Sylvan deck archetype, you have a lot of cards that'll get bonuses even when other cards return to your hand, when an archer leaves play, like Defender of the Ninth. Then you have other cards that give bonuses when cards enter play. like Celeborn, Galadriel. So you get these bonuses effectively for free. Another reason why you knew that Tree People is a good card is because it says you can only do it once in a round. That's usually a sign, absent a lot of other information, that's usually a sign it's a good card. If you want to build out a deck that's a strong deck and you don't know what you're doing, find cards that say limit once per turn or limit once per round or only one copy of this card can be played per round, things like that, because it's a sign that it's a card that is good, and stacking the benefits one on top of another would be game-breakingly good. So the Tree People is number 10. Number 9, another card with a restriction like that. Tighten Our Belts.
Tight, very tightly. Tight.
Tighten Our Belts is a card I actually overlooked when I first started playing World Rings, a card game. What Tighten Our Belts does is, at the end of a round, if any of your heroes have not spent resources in that round, Tighten Our Belts allows them to get an extra resource, if you can hold off on actually buying stuff. This is kind of like how the game works. Like, you're just making this decision anyway. You're deciding whether or not you're going to spend your resources now to make the board state better now, or whether you want to risk being a little bit weaker now to get better cards and be in a better situation later. How much do you save up versus how much do you spend? It's really kind of like life, in a way. They should have just called it Lord of the Rings, the Marshmallow Test. And this is the ultimate marshmallow. Maybe not the ultimate marshmallow, but it's a very good marshmallow. Not like the marshmallow that I dropped into my propane fire pit and is now just a bunch of carbon attached to the little glass rock things. A marshmallow that's nice and fluffy and definitely not a choking hazard. And the other thing that's nice with this card is you can wait. You don't need to decide at the beginning of the round, we're going to go for Tighten Our Belts. You can decide at the end of the round, say, oh, did we just not spend a lot this round? Did 8 of the heroes in play not spend resources? Let's just use it. Boom. There it is. It's hard to have 2. It's really hard to have none of your heroes spend any resources in a round. But Tighten Our Belts is a fun card for that reason. I think it's a big win when you have a multiplayer game and you get a good use of Tighten Our Belts. So Tighten Our Belts is number 9.
Very tightly.
Number 8. Haldir of Lorien. Haldir is a Sylvan elf, but instead of fitting into the Sylvan archetype of being all about entering and leaving play, Haldir is all about attacking. If you don't engage money in a given round, it means you're keeping your elves away from the main conflict. Haldir is able to launch an attack on cards not engaged with you, and the key being during the combat phase, which includes when enemies are attacking you. Usually, the way Lord of the Rings card game makes it difficult is all the enemies attack first, then you get to attack. This allows you to get ahead of that, and you can actually take on an enemy before they attack you. Not only that, Haldir of Lorien has another great card that goes with it in this cycle. The Bow of the Galadrim. It can be attached to an elf and gives +1 attack, but +2 attack if you're attacking an enemy not engaged with you. If you're not engaging anyone, you're definitely attacking other characters. So it adds to that. So you can get his attack up to 5. With 2 copies of the Bow of the Galadrim, you can get his attack up to 7. If you have tactics resources and you don't have Legolas in play, he's also a good addition for the Blade of Gondolin, because you can then get an extra attack against orcs, and you can also get progress when he makes these big attacks. So Haldir of Lorien kind of becomes Haldir the Bomber a little bit. Haldir the Howitzer, launching arrows all over the table. Haldir of Lorien is easily now number 8. Number 8 of all cards in Voice of Isengard and the Ringmaker. Number 7, Celeborn.
Tell me, where is Gandalf?
Like many of these cards, you may recognize them from the Elves of Lorien starter deck. Celeborn is the card that gives the most benefit to Sylvan allies entering play. Sylvan decks are mostly built around the mechanic of you return Sylvan allies to your hand. And when you do that, things happen, when the elves kind of just run away. Celeborn gives a bonus then when you bring the elves back into play. When a Sylvan ally enters play, Celeborn gives them an extra attack, willpower, and defense. So it makes them really strong. You have benefits to going both into play and out of play. And if you attach Olorian to Celeborn, you can exhaust an Olorian every turn to reduce the cost of a Sylvan ally by 1. To a minimum of 1. So Celeborn is really necessary for getting a Sylvan deck to work, because if you're going to be removing allies from play, you need to get them back in there. So getting that nice combination of Olorian on Celeborn is great. 2 editorial notes before we move on. 1, the cards that came out in this cycle were very dependent on each other. There weren't that many cards that were good just purely by themselves. The game at this point was mature enough that card synergies were more of a thing than individual power cards. There is one card, at least on this list, that doesn't require a lot of synergy, but most of the cards required helpers, and it's really about their network of helpers that made them strong. The second part, one of the most frustrating aspects of Rings of Power is the fact that Galadriel has like romantic interest for Sauron. I didn't see season 2, so I don't know what played out there, but like Celeborn is her husband, and he was around this whole time. Even though he's a Sylvan, I mean, he's kind of infamous in the movies.
Tell me, where is Gandalf? For I much desire to speak with him. I can no longer see him from afar.
Has fallen into shadow.
Yeah, I mean, that's partially why I didn't see season 2, because little things like that would frustrate me with Rings of Power. Number 6, noiseless movement. In this cycle, 3 cards came out that helped out secrecy decks in a particular way. Cards where if your threat were under 20 when you play them, you get to bring them back into your hand. Noiseless Movement was the best of those cards. Noiseless Movement allowed you to skip the engagement check against an enemy in the staging area, which meant you could basically ignore an enemy and not have to fight them. And this was a very big deal if you're going with a secrecy deck and you had a weak board state. This is especially true if you're playing with like hobbits and you're trying to play through the Lord of the Rings campaign. This can be a very good card because then for a cost of 1 each turn, you basically get to skip an enemy. Now, it would be nice if it were a more permanent effect, but have that choice come back into your hand every turn is still nice to have because you will often take it. The other 2 cards with the under 20 effects, Courage Awakened and Swift and Silent. Courage Awakened gave one of your characters, I think one of your heroes, 2 willpower. Swift and Silent allowed you to ready a hero. Swift and Silent is actually a lot like Corset Aragorn's effect, where you pay 1 resource to ready a hero. Except Swift and Silent, you're probably doing a weaker hero than Aragorn when you play it. Noiseless Movement to me has been the most useful one. The other 2, yeah, the 2 willpower and the readying of a hero are nice, but you're probably dealing with weaker heroes at this point. For example, if you ready a hobbit, they're not necessarily going to be able to defend against the enemy you're trying to avoid. You could be avoiding a pretty strong enemy. So noiseless movements usage, especially in secrecy decks, is a big one. Of note, it is a little bit annoying how secrecy is nowhere on the card. So if you're deck building through RingsDB, you have to remember to look for like the keyword 20 in the card text. You can easily forget about this card being a key secrecy card. But noiseless movement is nonetheless number 6. Number 5. Grima. One of the heroes from Voice of Isengard, also known as Grima Wormtongue, was one of the more controversial heroes to be released in the game's history. Controversial, not necessarily because of the nature of the card, but controversial in terms of the amount of controversy that it would generate during plays. So I mentioned before how the doomed keyword works. If a card is doomed 1, playing that card then adds 1 to everyone's threat total. Everyone's, not just your own. So Grima has this nice little ability where you can reduce the cost of a card by 1 if you give it doomed 1. So you'd reduce your cost and resources by 1, but you give everybody 1 threat. And that can be kind of annoying. It can also be very strong. And Grima also can be paired with the Keys of Orthanc card, which allows you to get a resource when a card inflicts the doomed keyword. So you could be playing a card, normally it's a cost 2. Not only does it cost 1, but you get a resource back. So it's kind of a free card, but everyone else has to pay the price for your, machinations in the dark here. So Grima is a strong card, especially strong solo too, where you can handle the doomed keyword and you don't have to piss off your friends to get the benefit to work. But it's too annoying to be higher than number 5. So Grima is number 5. Number 4, Galadriel. I'm reminded now that the Bow of the Galadrim is really supposed to be pronounced Bow of the Galadrim, because in Tolkien, DH is supposed to be pronounced like the TH in the, where TH is pronounced like the TH in thin. So it's really Bow of the Galadrim. That one's hard to remember. The Galadrim's greeting. Okay. Galadriel, the second hero in the game's history, if I'm getting my timing right, with 4 willpower. Although you can't use it in the traditional way. The way Galadriel works is when you first play her, it looks like her willpower is just kind of sitting there because she can't attack or defend. But for an action, she can give one of the players a card draw and -1 threat, which is a nice little thing. Then you bust out her Ring of Power, which is Nenya. You attach Nenya to Galadriel, and now, instead of doing that nice little action, you can also add her 4 willpower to someone else who's questing. Galadriel still can't go on the quest herself, but others can, and they effectively get her 4 willpower. So Nenya unlocks her full power. You also have the card in this cycle, Mirror of Galadriel, which allows you to pick a card from the top 10 in your deck. At the cost of then, after you pick it, you got to discard randomly a card from your hand. A lot of people might see that and just like, screw that, I'm not going to do that. I don't want to discard a card from my hand. The cards in my hand are cards I want. But when Noldor came in a little bit later, the Noldor cards started showing up in the cycle after this, in the Angmar Awakened cycle, playing cards from your discard pile became kind of important. It got really important in Dream Chaser. So it's actually not that bad. In some cases, could be a nice benefit. I should also mention, Galadriel also gives a benefit to allies when they come into play, in that they don't have to exhaust to commit to the quest. So if you have Celeborn and Galadriel, the married couple there, everyone shows up, they're really strong for a turn. And then you just got to pull them out of play because they're probably Sylvan. And that's the life of an elf. You just keep showing up in places. Galadriel is number 4. Number 3, Lembas Bread.
One small bite is enough to fill the stomach of a grown man.
Lembas Bread is the only card here that doesn't really require other cards to get on the list. This is that card I was teasing before. The way Lembas works, if you have an elf, attach it to another character. Then, when the time is right, you discard Lembas to ready the character and heal them 3 health and scratch the crumbs off of their cloak. Lembas toast would probably be very good. Butter on Lembas bread is probably delicious.
Honey butter, fresh bread. These are good things. Oh.
That's what I should have said. I should have made that the joke at the beginning. Getting back to the bread and butter of the channel, or should I say Lembas bread and butter? That'd be a little nerdy even for me. Lembas is kind of like Ancient Matham, where it's like a preparation to steal the card type from the video game adaptation of Lord of the Rings, the card game, you know, the adventure card game, or whatever they end up calling it. It's a preparation, so it's a card you play, and then you just got to remember you have it, because when the situation is right, you use it, and it's going to be worth a lot more than a lot of cards for a similar cost that you just keep in your hand. And it's kind of similar to Cram, although Cram is free and just gets you the ready effect. Lembas, for a cost of 1, gets you the ready effect and then the 3 health. And that's actually a very efficient, cost-efficient way to heal characters. And that became more of a thing as the game went on, is healing was really not a big deal early in the game, and that it was just never cost-effective to do it. You're more likely to chump block than heal. You eventually got to start healing when you get into other quests in the game, and Lembas really helps you do that. So Lembas card, strong by itself, fills up your belly, and it's the number 3 card for voice of Isengard in the Ringmaker.
That was pretty good. I think I might need another piece of bread.
Number 2, Treebeard. And this is the Treebeard ally card. And not too much later, the Treebeard hero card came out. You cannot use the Treebeard ally card and the Treebeard hero card. Treebeard hero could basically damage himself to power himself up. Treebeard ally was like a 4th hero, and kind of like Radagast from the Shadows of Mirkwood cycle, generate its own resources and use them for his particular ally type, which is the Ents. So it's like a 4th hero in a way. In my opinion, the ally Treebeard is the superior card compared to both versions of Treebeard. I could see arguments either way, but I think the ally card's better because you get that 4th hero effect. Now, the way Ents work is they enter play exhausted because they're slow. They take a long time to do anything. But if you just wait that 1 turn, you know, if you just hold off on that marshmallow, you know, that marshmallow and Lembas s'more, then you get a much more powerful card than you would normally get. So the other Ents that came out in this cycle were Booming Ent. You got extra attack when you had damaged Ents, and Wandering Ent, which is a strong card. Between Treebeard and those Ents, it was a good card type, and a lot more Ents came out. So overall, Treebeard's strong. I always like that. Again, if you imagine I like cards where you just need to survive long enough to get their benefit, I like Treebeard. It changes the parabolic arc of the game. A lot of Lord of the Rings card game is surviving until you can just overwhelm the scenario with, you know, a bunch of nonsense and win. Treebeard basically intensified that arc so that made it went from a binomial arc to a trinomial, or nerdy enough. All right, I don't need to get into like algebraic expressions here, but Treebeard would in theory allow you to accelerate your better game state by getting your Ents going. It was fun. I actually saw it as one of the most usable ally archetypes, that you didn't need to have like 50 cards in there to get to work. With Treebeard and a couple different Ents in your deck, you didn't even need a lot of the Ent attachments. You can get some Ents going, and it's a nice little, you know, you can sprinkle in some Ent into your Ent draft. Sprinkle some Ent draft into your analogy. Treebeard is number 2. And number 1, not a big surprise, is also my favorite character from the movies, Éomer. Éomer, not to be confused with the rider in the Flamme Rouge playthrough, Lettre de Oafir. This first incarnation of Éomer was the attacking Éomer. Maybe the strongest attacking card in the game, to be honest, because of his ability to get a strong attack with just a couple attachments and do it repeatedly. It's the way Éomer works. When a character leaves play, which happens a lot in Rohan decks, you have characters that will leave play by design. Éomer gets +2 attack. With Firefoot, which is a mount attachment, Éomer gets another +2 attack, and that's Éomer's personal mount. Also with Firefoot, if you now with your 7 attack overkill someone and you have excess damage, you can put that damage on another character. And then with Rohan Warhorse, if you knock someone out because you overkilled them, you get to ready the character, you get to ready Éomer to go attack again. So you get pretty much 2 attacks of 7 once you get Éomer and just put 2 mounts on him. There's a mount joke in there. I'm not going to try to find it. You know that scene in Return of the King where he takes out the Mumak with a spear? Just imagine doing that like twice per round, like every round. Yeah, that's 7 attack. That's what Aimer does. Aimer is very strong. Plus, because Aimer is going to have mounts, other cards like Charge of the Rohirrim are going to increase his attack even more if you time those cards up. So for a game where it always felt like you didn't quite have enough attack and you had to use cards with their gimmicks to try and get big attack, whether it was Gimli or whether it was dropping Gandalf into play or whether it was Eowyn from the Return of the King saga expansions, Aimer I always thought was the most, straightforward way to get strong attack numbers. Kind of like how I really liked Baragon as being a straightforward, very strong defender. Aimer was the straightforward, very strong attacker. And if I made my favorite tactics deck, I would probably include both of them. Aimer is the #1 card of the Voice of Isengard and the Ringmaker cycle. And if you disagree, let me know. We're moving through the cycles here. When we get to the next cycle, which is the Lost Realm and Angmar Awakened, we're going to do this a little bit differently because that one's been repackaged. Maybe we're going to do a tier list for all the cards here. Let me know your thoughts. If you like this video and you want to see more of that, for sure, subscribe to Jax's Warfield, and I'll see you for the next loaf of lembas bread and butter with a side event draft.